Michael's life had always been a delicate balancing act, one that required him to stretch every dollar, every moment, and every ounce of energy he had. Living in a small town in the American Midwest, he had grown used to the quiet rhythm of life here, the way the sun would rise over the rows of maple trees lining Main Street, the familiar honks of delivery trucks as they wound their way past modest brick houses, the faint smell of fresh coffee and bacon from the local diner that opened at dawn. It was the kind of town where everyone knew each other's names, where neighbors greeted each other with warmth, and where children played freely on the sidewalks until the streetlights flickered on in the evening. For Michael, this small-town charm brought a sense of comfort, even if it also reminded him daily of how little he had. His mornings began early, often before the sun had fully risen. He would lace up his worn sneakers, throw on a flannel shirt over a t-shirt, and make his way to the manufacturing plant where he had worked for the past 12 years. The plant was old, noisy, and smelled faintly of metal and oil, but it paid the bills. Michael's co-workers, a mix of men and women who had also grown up in this town, often joked about the monotony of their routines, yet there was a silent camaraderie among them, a shared understanding of the struggle of living paycheck to paycheck. Michael moved through his shifts with a quiet determination, glancing at the clock every now and then, thinking not about the long hours or aching muscles but about Emma. Emma, his 8-year-old daughter, was the sun in his life. Her laughter filled the modest 2-bedroom house they called home, a small but tidy space with white curtains and a few framed family photos on the walls. She had inherited her mother's hazel eyes and her father's stubborn spirit. Michael would often catch her reading in bed, her small fingers tracing the words in well-loved storybooks, or scribbling stories of fantastical worlds she dreamed of visiting one day. She was intelligent, curious, and full of warmth, yet she also carried a fragility that terrified Michael more than anything else in the world. Since the day her mother had passed away in a car accident when Emma was just 3, Michael had dedicated every fiber of his being to protecting her, shielding her from pain, and giving her as normal a childhood as possible. The first inkling that something was wrong had come subtly, a slight cough that refused to go away, a persistent tiredness that worried Michael. At first, he had brushed it off, attributing it to seasonal changes or a minor cold. But over weeks, the signs grew impossible to ignore. Emma's laughter began to dim, her small frame seemed frilier than before, and the sparkle in her eyes was replaced with quiet worry. When Michael finally took her to the local pediatrician, he was met with words that shattered his world, a serious medical condition that required urgent and costly treatment. The diagnosis was frightening, both in its medical complexity and in its financial implications. Even with insurance, the bills would dwarf everything he had worked for his entire life. The reality was harsh. In order to save his daughter, Michael would have to make unimaginable sacrifices. At night, after long days at the plant, he would sit on the edge of Emma's bed, holding her tiny hand, feeling the warmth that always comforted him even amidst his own fears. He would read her favorite stories, sometimes faltering in his voice as tears threatened to spill, reminding himself that his strength was her anchor. Emma, perceptive beyond her years, would notice the subtle tremor in his hands or the unsteady rhythm of his breathing, but she never complained. Instead, she would give him her shy, encouraging smile, her way of saying, "It's okay, Dad. We'll be okay." The weight of his responsibility pressed heavily upon him, a constant reminder that his every choice now carried the weight of her life. In their small-town community, news traveled fast, and soon Michael's neighbors and friends became aware of the crisis. The local school principal, a kind woman named Mrs. Reynolds, organized small fundraisers and bake sales to help. Friends from the plant offered overtime shifts and small loans, each gesture filled with kindness yet insufficient to cover the full cost of treatment. While the support warmed Michael's heart, it also underscored the impossible nature of the situation. He had to do something drastic, something that would cost him dearly, yet save the one person he loved most in the world. Amidst this turmoil, there remained one constant, one symbol of family legacy and memory that Michael clung to, the vintage wristwatch his father had given him on his 18th birthday. The watch had been passed down for generations, each scratch and dent telling the story of sacrifices, resilience, and the enduring bond of family. It was more than a timepiece, it was a tangible connection to his father's wisdom, to lessons about integrity and perseverance, and to the life Michael had been taught to build through hard work. Every glance at it reminded him of values he wanted to instill in Emma: honesty, courage, and love that transcends hardship. Yet now, in this moment of crisis, it had become both a symbol of comfort and a potential lifeline. As he sat at the kitchen table late one night, surrounded by unpaid bills and treatment estimates, Michael held the watch in his hands, turning it over gently as he considered the impossible choice before him. The thought of giving it up made his chest tighten with grief. Yet the thought of losing Emma, or of failing to give her the chance to survive, filled him with a desperation that overshadowed even his own heartache. He understood, in that quiet, lonely moment, that some sacrifices, no matter how painful, were necessary. He could give up anything, everything he owned, if it meant ensuring his daughter's life, her chance to grow, to laugh, to dream. This realization came with a flood of emotions: sorrow for what he was about to lose, fear of the uncertainty ahead, but also an unwavering determination. He thought of Emma's smile, the way her small hand felt in his, the light in her eyes that no hardship could dim. Michael knew that the path forward would be painful, but love demanded it. As he tightened the clasp of the watch one final time, feeling the cold metal against his palm, he made a silent vow: whatever it took, he would not let his daughter down. His heart ached, but in that ache lay the purest form of devotion, a father's love willing to bear the weight of sacrifice. The next morning, Michael would rise before dawn as always, but today, the steps he took would carry the heaviest purpose of his life. He would face the impossible, confront his deepest fears, and make a choice that would define both his life and Emma's. The small town continued to stir awake outside his window, unaware of the monumental decision unfolding in a quiet kitchen, where a father's heart bore the weight of sacrifice heavier than anyone could see. Every detail, the smell of coffee brewing, the rustle of papers, the soft footsteps of Emma padding into the kitchen, was a reminder of what was at stake. Michael took a deep breath, holding the watch close to his chest, knowing that love, not material wealth, would guide him through the trials ahead. Michael held the vintage watch in his hands once more, turning it over carefully as though it were a fragile relic from another life. The metal was slightly worn, its edges dulled by years of use, yet it carried a weight far heavier than mere time. It was the embodiment of his family's history, a tangible piece of the past that connected him to his late father. Every scratch and dent told a story, a lesson learned, a struggle endured, a moment of triumph or sorrow preserved in silent testament. The watch had been given to him on his 18th birthday, a rite of passage that marked the transition from boyhood to adulthood. His father had looked at him then, eyes steady and voice firm yet tender, and said, "This isn't just a watch. It's a reminder that time is precious and that every choice you make carries the weight of your values." Those words had shaped Michael in ways he only fully understood now, as a single father facing the most difficult choice of his life. The diagnosis of Emma's illness had shattered the fragile equilibrium of their lives, thrusting Michael into a reality he had never imagined. The bills were staggering, far beyond anything his modest income could cover. He had spent sleepless nights calculating, reconsidering every financial option: personal loans, crowdfunding efforts, community fundraisers, but nothing was sufficient. Even the small town's generous spirit, the neighbors' willingness to help, could not bridge the gap. As he sat alone in his dimly lit living room, the glow of a single lamp casting long shadows across the worn carpet, the watch seemed to pulse with significance. It had become a symbol of a choice he could no longer evade: sentimental value or Emma's life. Michael's internal struggle was immense. To sell the watch felt like betraying his father's memory, like severing a connection that had given him strength through every hardship. Yet the thought of watching his daughter suffer, of knowing that her life might be cut short because of insufficient funds, was unbearable. Every heartbeat, every breath, was a reminder that time itself was fleeting, and that inaction carried consequences heavier than he could bear. His mind oscillated between despair and determination, memory and duty, as he contemplated the impossible decision. He began to weigh practical considerations, thinking of the small number of potential buyers who would appreciate the watch's value. There was a certain collector in a neighboring city known for purchasing heirlooms, a man of wealth who cared more about the prestige of owning rare objects than about their history. Michael shuddered at the thought of parting with the watch for mere money, yet he reminded himself that the currency of life was far more important than material possessions. The collector, wealthy, detached, and calculating, would never understand the sentimental weight the watch carried, but for Michael, its sale would mean Emma's chance at survival. As he considered this, Michael was flooded with memories of his father. The long afternoons spent learning about mechanics, the quiet evenings in the workshop, the stories told by the flickering light of the fireplace, all of these moments were intertwined with the watch. It had been a constant through graduations, family gatherings, and milestones too small for anyone else to notice. Selling it felt like erasing a part of his own identity, yet remaining stagnant risked losing the one person who had become the center of his universe. The emotional conflict gnawed at him relentlessly, each second of indecision a reminder of the stakes. Michael tried to seek advice from friends, co-workers, and even distant relatives, yet each suggestion, though well-intentioned, fell short. "Maybe there's a foundation or a grant," one co-worker suggested over lunch at the factory cafeteria, the fluorescent lights buzzing overhead. "I could lend you some cash," offered another, "just until you get more hours in." But Michael knew that even combined, these efforts would cover only a fraction of the total cost. The realization settled like a cold weight in his chest, the decision rested solely on his shoulders. He alone had to navigate the chasm between love and loss, between memory and survival. At night, when Emma slept, Michael would sit in the quiet darkness, cradling the watch in his hands, tracing the intricate engravings along its face. He whispered to himself, as if hoping the walls could absorb his words, "I love you, Dad. I will do right by you, no matter what." His voice trembled, carrying grief and resolve in equal measure. There were moments when he imagined walking into the city, exchanging the watch for the money that could save Emma. The thought made his stomach churn, and yet, every time he pictured her small, hopeful eyes, he knew the sacrifice was unavoidable. Michael also contemplated the future. He envisioned a life without the watch but with Emma healthy, growing, and thriving. It was a vision that brought both hope and sorrow, hope because it offered the possibility of life and joy, sorrow because it came at a personal cost that left him emotionally hollow. The contrast between the love he bore for Emma and the loss he would endure for her survival created an almost unbearable tension, a dichotomy between what he cherished and what he must relinquish. It was in these moments that Michael's character shone most clearly, his unwavering devotion, his capacity for selflessness, and his ability to endure heartache for the sake of another. The small town around him continued its familiar rhythm, unaware of the moral battle unfolding in the modest house on Elm Street. Children's laughter echoed from the playground, neighbors exchanged morning greetings, and the local diner served its daily specials with a comforting predictability. Yet inside, time seemed to stretch endlessly for Michael, each minute weighted with the knowledge that the choice he made would alter the course of both his life and Emma's. The watch, sitting in his palm like a fragile talisman, became the fulcrum of his dilemma, representing all that he loved and all that he feared losing. Ultimately, Michael understood that some sacrifices demanded a courage beyond ordinary measure. The choice to sell the watch was not merely financial, it was an act of love, an embodiment of a father's unwavering commitment to his child. The watch, which had once marked the passage of time in his own life, now represented the time he could secure for Emma's future. With a deep, steadying breath, he resolved that the bond between father and daughter, the continuation of life and hope, outweighed the material and emotional attachments of his past. In that moment of clarity, Michael realized that true love often requires the most difficult, yet noblest, of sacrifices. He placed the watch gently into a small velvet pouch, feeling its weight as a tangible reminder of the legacy and love he carried forward. Every step he would take from this point on, each trip to the city, each conversation with the collector, would carry with it the weight of intention, hope, and moral resolve. Michael knew that life would not be the same once the watch was gone, yet he also understood that the greatest inheritance a parent could offer was not wealth or objects, but the gift of survival, opportunity, and unconditional love. With the decision now made, Michael allowed himself a moment of quiet reflection, sitting at the edge of the kitchen table, the dim lamplight casting shadows across the worn wood. He whispered into the night, "I'm doing this for you, Emma. I will carry this loss for a lifetime if it means you can have yours." And in that quiet, solemn space, a father's heart bore the weight of sacrifice heavier than any treasure, richer than any inheritance, and infinitely more precious than anything else in the world. The morning sun crept slowly over the rooftops of the small town, casting a soft, golden light across the streets Michael had walked countless times. Today, however, each step felt heavier than usual, weighed down not by physical exhaustion but by the emotional burden he carried. The vintage watch lay in his pocket, a small velvet pouch cradling the legacy of generations, a tangible reminder of love and sacrifice. Each ticket once made now seemed to echo in his chest, a persistent heartbeat reminding him of the impossible choice before him. Selling it was not simply a transaction, it was an act that would sever a link to his past, a piece of himself he could never reclaim. Yet, it was also the key to Emma's survival. Michael arrived at the city, the hum of traffic, towering office buildings, and the rush of businesspeople forming a stark contrast to the gentle rhythm of his hometown. The collector's shop was discreet, tucked between a high-end cafe and a bookstore that smelled of old paper and coffee. Inside, the room gleamed with polished wooden shelves and glass cases filled with rare artifacts and antiques. The atmosphere was sterile yet imposing, a world that existed outside of Michael's humble life, a world where objects carried prestige, value measured not in sentiment but in dollars. As he stepped inside, the man behind the counter looked up, sharp eyes flicking over Michael with a polite, practiced attachment. Michael cleared his throat, feeling the lump in his throat tighten. He placed the watch carefully on the counter, its polished surface catching the morning light and reflecting it back in glimmers. The collector picked it up with deliberate precision, turning it over and examining every scratch and dent. Michael felt a pang of grief, as though each movement of the watch was a reminder that he was parting with more than metal and mechanics, he was giving away history, memory, love. The man's expression was impassive, professional. "It's a fine piece," he said, voice measured. "I can offer you a sum that reflects its rarity and condition." Michael listened, nodding, though the words seemed distant, almost surreal. The negotiation began, a delicate dance of numbers, market value, and appraised worth. Michael's stomach twisted with every increment offered, every calculated assessment, as if each figure chipped away a piece of his heart. He thought of Emma, her small hands clutching his, her hopeful eyes that seemed to ask for life itself. No amount of personal loss could compare to what was at stake. Yet, in that sterile room, surrounded by wealth and cold appraisal, Michael also felt exposed, vulnerable, and painfully human. He realized that the measure of sacrifice was not the money he received but the willingness to endure personal grief for another's well-being. The collector's office was silent except for the faint ticking of a clock on the wall. Michael imagined the sound was echoing the ticking of his own life, the precious seconds he hoped to buy for Emma. Each offer and counteroffer felt heavy with consequence, each word spoken measured against the weight of a father's love. Michael's pride and hesitation wrestled with the raw necessity of the situation. Selling the watch was humbling, an admission of need, yet it was also the most selfless act he could perform. In that moment, he understood that love demanded courage and courage demanded action, no matter how painful. As the final figure was agreed upon, Michael felt a strange mixture of relief and grief. He had achieved his goal, the funds for Emma's treatment were now within reach, but at a cost that left him emotionally raw. Handing over the watch felt like relinquishing a part of his soul. The collector took it carefully, wrapping it in velvet and placing it into a secure display case, completely unaware of the story and meaning embedded within the object. Michael left the shop with cash in hand, a tangible means to save his daughter, yet the loss of the watch lingered like a shadow, a reminder that sacrifice often carries both reward and sorrow. The drive back home was quiet. Michael's mind replayed memories of his father, the lessons imparted, the moments spent learning life's values through small, seemingly insignificant acts that now held profound meaning. He thought of Emma, her laughter, her curiosity, her fragile yet unbreakable spirit. The streets of the city blurred past him, and the familiar scenery of his hometown slowly emerged as he approached the edge of town. It was as if the act of returning home carried with it both the weight of grief and the light of hope, a duality that defined the essence of sacrifice. When Michael arrived home, Emma was sitting at the kitchen table, drawing in her sketchbook, completely unaware of the decision her father had made. Her small presence, the innocence of her routine, struck Michael with the depth of what he had done. He knelt beside her, brushing a strand of hair from her forehead, feeling the warmth of her trust and love. In that simple moment, he understood that the most difficult choices often went unseen, that the quiet courage of everyday acts could shape a life in ways that no one else would notice. Selling the watch had been an act of love, one that required the surrender of sentiment for the sake of another, and he felt both the heaviness and the nobility of that truth. Later that night, as Emma slept, Michael sat alone at the edge of her bed, the empty space on his wrist a constant reminder of the sacrifice he had made. He reflected on the journey that had led him to this point, the quiet mornings, the endless work shifts, the sleepless nights of worry and calculation. He realized that the value of a thing was not in its material form, but in what it could enable. The watch, once a symbol of legacy and pride, had now become a lifeline for his daughter, transforming grief into hope. In the following days, Michael navigated the process of arranging treatment, coordinating with doctors, hospitals, and insurance representatives. Each step brought challenges, forms to fill, approvals to wait for, and the constant stress of navigating a system designed for efficiency rather than empathy. Yet, in every phone call, every appointment, every fleeting moment of doubt, the memory of the watch and what it represented kept him steady. He knew that every decision, every sacrifice, and every ounce of effort was now directly tied to Emma's chance at life. The weight of responsibility was immense, but so was the motivation that love provided. Michael's small town, meanwhile, remained his silent audience, its familiar rhythms continuing outside his window. Neighbors waved as they passed, unaware of the emotional storm that had reshaped one family's life. In this ordinary setting, Michael's extraordinary courage and devotion stood in quiet contrast. The contrast between the modesty of his surroundings and the enormity of his sacrifice highlighted the universal truth that heroism often exists in small, unseen acts. The town continued its daily life, but for Michael, every moment was now imbued with purpose, urgency, and love that transcended hardship. As the days turned into weeks, and Emma began treatment, Michael found himself reflecting not on the loss of the watch but on the power of his choice. The decision, though excruciating, had preserved life, instilled hope, and demonstrated the depth of a father's love. He understood that while material objects may carry sentiment, the act of selflessness carries a far greater legacy, a legacy of devotion, courage, and the enduring bond between parent and child. Each night, as he lay beside Emma, listening to her soft, even breathing, he felt a quiet peace, a subtle assurance that despite the pain and loss, the heart's truest treasures were not objects, but the lives and happiness of those we love most. The hospital smelled of antiseptic and quiet urgency, a world away from the familiar streets of their small town. Michael sat in a stiff plastic chair beside Emma's bed, gripping her small hand as the steady beep of monitors filled the room. The bright fluorescent lights made the space feel both sterile and endless, but he tried to focus only on her, the way she tucked her blanket tightly under her chin, the faint rise and fall of her chest, and the delicate curve of her eyelashes resting against her cheeks. Each moment was a reminder that time was precious, that every heartbeat, every breath, was a gift he could protect only through the sacrifices he had made. Emma's treatment was grueling. Chemotherapy sessions stretched for hours, leaving her weak, nauseated, and often in tears. Michael stayed by her side through every session, holding her hand when she winced from pain, whispering words of encouragement when the fear in her eyes threatened to overwhelm her. The contrast between her youthful innocence and the harsh reality of illness was stark, a heartbreaking juxtaposition that made every day feel simultaneously long and fleeting. Michael's exhaustion was profound, yet he endured it without complaint, knowing that his own discomfort paled in comparison to the suffering of his daughter. The medical staff, though professional and attentive, moved quickly from one patient to the next, their empathy measured and sometimes fleeting in the face of countless responsibilities. Nurses offered small comforts, ice chips, gentle words, a hand on the shoulder, but Michael filled in the gaps, providing the warmth, consistency, and unconditional love that no hospital procedure could offer. He became her anchor, the constant presence in a world of uncertainty, holding not just her hand but also her hope. In those moments, the watch he had sold seemed both painfully distant and profoundly symbolic. He had exchanged an object of memory for the chance to be here, fully present, as his daughter fought for her life. Outside the hospital, life continued, indifferent to their struggle. The small-town rhythm persisted, mail carriers delivered letters, school buses carried children to class, and local diners served the same pancakes and coffee that had always been part of Michael's mornings. Yet within the hospital walls, a different reality existed, one where the fragility of life was tangible, where every decision carried consequence, and where the love of a single parent could become a lifeline. Michael navigated this world tirelessly, balancing appointments, insurance forms, and coordination with specialists, all while trying to maintain the fragile sense of normalcy that Emma still craved. Despite the pain and the long hours, Emma displayed remarkable courage. Her strength was quiet but palpable. She would sometimes smile faintly when Michael whispered silly jokes to distract her, or when the nurse complimented a drawing she had made during her brief moments of rest. These small victories, often unnoticed by anyone else, became monumental for Michael. Each smile, each moment of resilience, felt like a repayment of the love and sacrifices he had made. He marveled at her bravery, understanding that the foundation of her courage had been laid by the stability, care, and devotion he had given her all these years. The bond between father and daughter deepened in these challenging days. Michael learned to read subtle cues, the tightening of her fingers, the shift of her eyes, the slight quiver in her voice. He became attuned not just to her physical needs but to her emotional state, offering comfort before words were spoken, anticipating fear before it fully emerged. Emma, in turn, grew to trust her father implicitly, relying on his calm presence to anchor her in a world that had suddenly become unpredictable and frightening. Their connection was a quiet testament to the power of love in the face of adversity, a relationship strengthened by hardship yet illuminated by mutual devotion. Michael also experienced moments of despair. There were nights when he sat alone in the hospital's waiting room, the soft hum of air conditioning and distant conversations emphasizing his isolation. He wrestled with fear, guilt, and the relentless question of whether he had done enough, whether his sacrifices would ultimately suffice. Yet each time he returned to Emma's side, he found renewed strength, fueled by the life he was fighting to protect. The weight of responsibility was immense, but the purpose behind it made every challenge bearable. Community support, though distant, provided subtle comfort. Friends and neighbors occasionally called or sent messages of encouragement, and the small town's teachers and classmates organized small fundraisers. While the money helped, it was the symbolic gesture, the knowledge that Emma was loved beyond the hospital walls, that buoyed Michael's spirits. These moments reminded him that they were not alone, that love and support could come from many directions, forming a network of hope that supplemented the medical care Emma desperately needed. As weeks turned into months, Michael witnessed gradual improvements. Emma's strength returned incrementally, her laughter began to flicker back, and her eyes regained a spark that had dimmed with illness. Each milestone, no matter how small, was celebrated quietly in their hearts: a longer nap without nausea, a morning where she could eat breakfast without struggle, a day when she could draw or read without fatigue. For Michael, these victories were profound, affirming that the sacrifice of the watch, the sleepless nights, and the relentless worry had all been worth it. In the quiet moments between treatments, Michael reflected on the nature of his choice. Selling the watch had been painful, yet it had granted him the chance to be fully present in his daughter's battle, to offer her hope, comfort, and love. The act itself became a symbol of everything he valued: selflessness, courage, and unwavering devotion. It was a lesson in priorities, an example of the lengths to which a parent would go to protect a child. The experience reinforced the truth that sometimes the hardest decisions yield the most meaningful outcomes, and that love often requires action more than sentiment. By the end of her treatment, Emma had regained a measure of her health, her vitality slowly returning. The monitors no longer beeped incessantly, the hospital visits became routine checkups rather than emergency interventions, and Michael allowed himself to breathe deeply, feeling relief mingled with lingering fear that life's challenges could strike again. Yet through it all, he had witnessed the resilience of his daughter, the power of community support, and the transformative nature of sacrifice. In this crucible of pain and perseverance, father and daughter emerged stronger, their bond unbreakable, their hearts tempered by love and endurance. The months and years following Emma's treatment passed in a rhythm that was both ordinary and extraordinary, a quiet testament to resilience and the healing power of love. Their small town, with its tree-lined streets and familiar faces, seemed unchanged to outsiders, yet for Michael and Emma, every corner held the echoes of their trials, the weight of their survival, and the quiet victories that had been hard-won. Michael returned to his work at the factory with a renewed sense of purpose, each shift a reminder of the sacrifices that had been made and the responsibilities he carried. Though he still lived modestly, every paycheck, every small comfort, felt imbued with meaning. Life was no longer just about survival, it was about cherishing each moment, nurturing growth, and rebuilding hope. Emma blossomed during these years, growing from a fragile child into a bright, compassionate teenager. She returned to school with a gentle yet quiet confidence, carrying the experiences of illness not as a burden but as a source of empathy and maturity. Teachers and classmates noticed the subtle depth in her demeanor, the way she seemed to understand unspoken emotions and offer comfort to others without prompting. Michael watched her with pride and cautious relief, aware that her resilience was a reflection not only of her character but also of the unwavering support and love he had provided through the darkest days of her life. Their home, though small, became a sanctuary of normalcy and warmth. The modest furniture, the carefully tended garden, and the soft sunlight spilling through the curtains all spoke to a life rebuilt, not in luxury, but in love. Michael took every opportunity to instill values he had learned from his father: honesty, kindness, diligence, and empathy. They spent evenings together reading, cooking, and talking about dreams, morals, and the simple joys of everyday life. Michael often reflected on how fragile yet precious life could be, reminding himself that these quiet moments, filled with laughter and conversation, were the true treasures of his existence. Michael's sacrifices had left their mark, yet they were never spoken of in grand gestures. The absence of the vintage watch on his wrist served as a subtle reminder of the past, a past filled with pain, choice, and devotion. Occasionally, he would glance at the space where it once rested and feel a pang of longing, a mixture of grief and pride. It was a reminder that the hardest choices often leave invisible scars, yet also create invisible bonds of love and endurance that cannot be measured by material wealth. For Michael, the watch had been exchanged for the most priceless gift of all, Emma's life, and the chance to see her grow, thrive, and pursue her dreams. Emma's life during these years was a tapestry of growth and self-discovery. She engaged in school activities, formed friendships, and discovered passions that would shape her future. She developed a keen sense of empathy, often volunteering at community events or helping peers who struggled, as though she carried within her a deep understanding of hardship and the desire to make a difference. Michael observed her quietly, marveling at how the child who had endured so much pain had emerged with a spirit that was not hardened, but tender, resilient, and compassionate. Their bond, forged in the crucible of adversity, grew stronger with every shared experience. The town itself played a role in their ongoing recovery. Familiar faces offered quiet encouragement and support, celebrating milestones with small gestures, a congratulatory note on Emma's school achievements, a basket of homemade cookies, or an invitation to local events. These seemingly minor interactions reinforced a sense of community and belonging, emphasizing that life after hardship was not meant to be endured alone. Michael and Emma thrived within this network of care, finding strength in connections that were grounded in mutual respect, compassion, and shared humanity. As Emma entered her teenage years, Michael noticed a growing independence in her demeanor. She began to ask questions about the world, about morality, and about the sacrifices that people make for those they love. These conversations, while often subtle, revealed a mind capable of profound thought and reflection. Michael found himself answering with honesty and humility, sharing lessons he had learned from both his father and his own experiences. He emphasized that true strength lay not in wealth or accolades, but in the ability to persevere, to act with integrity, and to love selflessly, even when the cost was personal. Though life had returned to a sense of normalcy, the shadow of past struggles lingered as a silent motivator. Michael remained vigilant about Emma's health, attending regular checkups, monitoring her growth, and ensuring that her emotional well-being was nurtured alongside her physical recovery. Yet, alongside vigilance, there was also celebration. The small victories that had once seemed impossible now became ordinary markers of progress. Emma learned to ride her bike, participate in school performances, and dream about the future without fear, each milestone a triumph over the challenges they had faced together. Michael's character continued to develop in subtle but meaningful ways. He was no longer just a provider in the financial sense, he had become a mentor, a moral guide, and a source of emotional stability for Emma. The depth of his love was evident in the way he listened, guided, and encouraged her, never pushing too hard, but always present. He became a model of resilience and quiet heroism, showing that courage is not always loud or visible, but often demonstrated in the daily choices to persevere, nurture, and protect. Throughout these years, Michael occasionally reflected on the life he might have had, the choices he had been forced to make, and the sacrifices he had undertaken. He thought about the watch, its absence a reminder that love sometimes demands difficult choices and that the value of a possession is measured not by its market worth, but by what it enables in the lives of those we cherish. Each reflection reinforced the moral that true legacy is not inherited wealth, but the strength, values, and compassion passed from one generation to the next. As Emma's personality flourished, she began to display subtle signs of gratitude and understanding of her father's sacrifices. Though she could not yet grasp the full extent of what had been done for her, her actions, small gestures of care, attentiveness, and respect, hinted at the kind of person she was becoming. Michael watched these moments quietly, filled with a mixture of pride, hope, and a touch of bittersweet longing. He understood that the hardships of the past had shaped both their lives, leaving scars but also creating opportunities for growth, resilience, and deep emotional bonds. By the time Emma reached her mid-teens, it was clear that the years of struggle had left a lasting impact, not as a source of pain, but as a foundation for strength and character. The father-daughter duo had navigated life's storm together, emerging not just intact, but enriched with understanding, empathy, and appreciation for one another. Every shared meal, quiet conversation, and moment of laughter reflected the enduring power of love and the human capacity to heal and thrive after adversity. Michael had learned that survival was not enough, true success lay in nurturing life, fostering emotional growth, and cultivating the moral compass that would guide Emma through the challenges yet to come. The years following her recovery were transformative for Emma, shaping her not only as a young adult but also as a person of depth, empathy, and resilience. Michael watched her grow with a mixture of pride and quiet astonishment. The girl who had once clung to him with wide, fearful eyes was now blossoming into a compassionate, thoughtful young woman. Her experiences had left an imprint that was both subtle and profound, a quiet awareness of hardship and an innate desire to uplift those around her. Every gesture she made, from helping a classmate struggling with homework to volunteering at the local community center, reflected lessons she had absorbed about love, sacrifice, and the importance of gratitude. Emma's transformation was evident in the way she approached life with a sense of purpose. She excelled academically, not for accolades, but because she understood the value of opportunity, the chance to create a life built on hard work and determination. Teachers noticed her thoughtfulness and maturity, often highlighting her ability to empathize with peers and contribute meaningfully to group projects. Michael, observing these moments, felt a deep satisfaction that went beyond pride. He recognized that the foundation of her character had been built during the most difficult chapters of their lives, the months of treatment, the sleepless nights. In the hospital, and the sacrifices made in the name of love. At home, their bond deepened in ways that were almost imperceptible to outsiders but profoundly impactful for them both. Evenings were often spent discussing life, values, and dreams. Michael encouraged Emma to explore her interests, whether through art, writing, or community engagement, nurturing her talents and teaching her that personal fulfillment comes not only from achievement but also from contributing to the lives of others. In return, Emma displayed a growing sense of responsibility and thoughtfulness, anticipating needs, offering support, and expressing her appreciation in small but meaningful ways. The absence of the watch on Michael's wrist, a once constant presence, now seemed like a silent testament to the love and foresight that had made all of this possible. Emma also began to cultivate a moral understanding of the sacrifices made for her. Though she was too young to fully grasp the financial and emotional weight of the decisions Michael had taken, she sensed the depth of his love and the quiet courage it required. She would occasionally ask questions about the past, about the struggles they had faced, and Michael would answer honestly, carefully, and with humility. He told her about the watch, the choice to sell it, and the lessons it carried, not as a tale of loss, but as a story of devotion, the kind of moral compass he hoped would guide her as she grew into adulthood. These conversations were tender and educational, bridging the gap between experience and understanding, and laying the groundwork for Emma to internalize the values of selflessness, perseverance, and gratitude. In her social life, Emma's character began to shine. Friends were drawn to her warmth, her ability to listen, and her quiet confidence. She became someone who inspired trust and kindness, a young woman whose resilience was evident yet never ostentatious. The community, which had once rallied to support her in the darkest times, now observed her transformation with quiet admiration. Small gestures, like volunteering at school events, participating in local fundraisers, or assisting with community outreach, reflected not just gratitude but a commitment to pay forward the compassion and support she had received. Emma's evolution became a living testament to the power of love and sacrifice, showing that hardship, when met with guidance and care, could cultivate profound empathy and moral strength. Michael often reflected on the significance of these developments. The sacrifices he had made, the sleepless nights, the financial strain, the emotional turmoil, had been absorbed into a larger purpose. Every lesson imparted, every moment of support, every instance of unwavering devotion had contributed to shaping a young woman capable of gratitude, empathy, and integrity. Michael's pride was matched by relief. The life they had fought to preserve was now thriving, and the values they had cultivated together were taking root in a meaningful, lasting way. Emma's personal projects reflected her growing sense of responsibility and awareness. She started organizing small initiatives in her school to support peers facing challenges, whether financial, emotional, or academic. Michael watched her take the lead with a mixture of awe and humility, understanding that these actions were not about recognition but about genuine compassion. In guiding her, he saw the direct impact of his sacrifices and the moral lessons that had been subtly woven into her upbringing. The watch, long gone, remained symbolically present in their lives, reminder that love, when coupled with action, can create ripple effects that endure far beyond the immediate moment. As Emma approached her late teenage years, she began to make plans for her future with determination and clarity. She spoke about college aspirations, potential career paths, and ways to continue giving back to the community that had supported her family. Michael encouraged her dreams, always reminding her that the most important foundation for any pursuit was integrity, compassion, and resilience. The hardships of their past had prepared her for the challenges of the future, and Michael's quiet guidance ensured that she was equipped to face life with both confidence and humility. The small town itself continued to play a role in Emma's growth. Familiar faces, local institutions, and community traditions provided a backdrop of stability and encouragement. Each interaction, from greetings on the street to casual conversations at the diner, reinforced the importance of connection and mutual care. For Emma, these seemingly ordinary experiences reinforced lessons about generosity, patience, and community, lessons she had witnessed firsthand during her illness and recovery. The combination of family love and community support became a powerful force, shaping her worldview and strengthening her commitment to kindness and service. By the time Emma was nearing the end of high school, it was evident that her character had been profoundly shaped by both adversity and love. She possessed an emotional intelligence and empathy that set her apart, qualities that had been nurtured by her father's unwavering devotion and the trials they had faced together. Michael observed her not just with pride, but with quiet fulfillment, knowing that the sacrifices he had made, including the heartbreaking choice to sell the watch, had yielded more than survival. They had cultivated a moral and emotional richness that would guide her for the rest of her life. In these years, Michael's lessons extended beyond words. Through everyday interactions, shared experiences, and acts of selflessness, he demonstrated that love requires courage, that resilience is forged through trials, and that gratitude is best expressed through compassion and action. Emma absorbed these lessons naturally, allowing them to guide her choices and shape her worldview. The bond between father and daughter, strengthened by shared struggle and unwavering support, became a cornerstone of both their lives, a foundation of trust, love, and moral clarity that would endure well into adulthood. As Emma grew into late adolescence, the memories of her early childhood, the hospital rooms, the nights spent watching her father worry, the days of treatment and recovery, never faded. They lingered quietly in her mind, shaping her sense of responsibility and gratitude. Though she had been too young at the time to fully comprehend the depth of Michael's sacrifice, a growing awareness began to emerge as she matured. She started to understand that her father had given up something invaluable to ensure her survival, a piece of family history, a token of love, and a symbol of enduring legacy. The vintage watch he had sold was more than an object, it was a testament to a parent's selfless devotion, a gift of life disguised as loss. Emma carried this understanding with her into everyday life, letting it inform her actions, her attitudes, and her aspirations. She began to cultivate a personal mission, to honor the sacrifices that had been made for her, to embody the love and resilience that had defined her early years, and to make meaningful contributions that would reflect her father's devotion. Even in small gestures, helping her classmates, volunteering at community programs, or taking care of younger siblings in the neighborhood, she demonstrated a quiet but profound sense of responsibility and gratitude. Her character became a living reflection of the lessons Michael had instilled in her, the lessons learned through experience rather than lectures. One evening, as Michael returned from a long shift at the factory, Emma met him at the door, a folder of sketches and notes in her hands. Her eyes shone with determination, a spark that had grown steadily over the years. "Dad," she said, her voice steady, "I've been working on something. I want to give back, not just to you, but to everyone who's ever helped me or someone in need." Michael looked at her, seeing not only his daughter but also the embodiment of hope, gratitude, and moral clarity. He felt a swell of pride, tinged with the quiet realization that the impact of his sacrifice was rippling far beyond what he had imagined. Emma's initiative was ambitious. She began planning a community program that would provide support to families facing medical emergencies, particularly those who, like them, might not have the financial resources to cover urgent treatments. She researched grants, spoke with local organizations, and organized small fundraising events, always ensuring that her father's guidance and wisdom informed her decisions. Michael watched her navigate this process with careful attention, offering advice but allowing her autonomy, recognizing that this was her way of expressing gratitude and translating the love she had received into action that could touch the lives of others. The moral weight of Emma's actions was profound. Each project she undertook carried with it the lessons of her childhood, empathy, perseverance, and the understanding that real change often requires personal effort and courage. Her work was not about recognition or reward, it was about making a tangible difference, about ensuring that other families would experience the kind of support that had helped her survive and thrive. In this way, she honored her father's sacrifice without ever needing to articulate it fully, letting her deeds speak louder than words. Michael, for his part, felt a mixture of awe and humility. He had given up a cherished possession, endured financial strain, and weathered emotional storms, all for the sake of Emma's life. Yet watching her grow into someone committed to service and gratitude, he realized that the true reward of his sacrifice was unfolding before him. The daughter he had saved was now saving others in her own way, creating a ripple effect of compassion and resilience. Every event she organized, every family she assisted, every life she touched was a living testament to the power of love, sacrifice, and moral courage. Emma's growth also highlighted the contrast between material wealth and moral richness. She had witnessed firsthand the limitations of money and the inadequacy of possessions in the face of life-altering challenges. The sale of the watch, once a source of heartache for Michael, had become a metaphor in her mind. True value lies not in objects, but in the lives we touch and the love we give. This realization guided her choices, influencing not only her community work but also her personal development, her friendships, and the way she approached challenges. She understood that gratitude is not passive, it requires action, commitment, and integrity. The father-daughter dynamic deepened further during this period. Michael continued to serve as a guide, mentor, and confidant, but he also allowed Emma the space to make decisions, take risks, and learn from experience. This trust empowered her, reinforcing the lessons of resilience and moral responsibility he had sought to instill throughout her upbringing. Their shared history of hardship created a bond that was unbreakable, an understanding that transcended words and was grounded in mutual respect, love, and shared values. Each discussion, each collaborative decision, strengthened both Emma's independence and Michael's confidence in her judgment. Emma's drive culminated in a local recognition event organized by the community center. Families who had benefited from her initiatives, neighbors who had witnessed her dedication, and even local media gathered to honor her efforts. Michael sat quietly in the audience, his hands folded, the empty space on his wrist a quiet reminder of the sacrifices that had enabled this moment. When Emma spoke, she did not mention the watch explicitly, but her words carried its legacy, a commitment to service, gratitude, and the profound understanding that love is measured not by what is kept, but by what is given. Her voice, steady and clear, resonated with everyone in the room, conveying a depth of emotion that moved even the most stoic observers. In the privacy of their home later that evening, Michael and Emma shared a quiet conversation. "Dad," she said, "I know you gave up something so important for me. I can never repay you fully, but I want you to know that I'm trying to honor it in every choice I make." Michael, his throat tight with emotion, simply held her hand, feeling the full weight of her words. He realized then that the seeds of gratitude he had hoped to plant had grown into something beautiful and enduring. The watch may have been gone, but its spirit, the essence of love, sacrifice, and moral courage, lived on in Emma's heart and actions. As Emma prepared for the next chapter of her life, the foundation laid by her father's sacrifice continued to guide her. The lessons of empathy, perseverance, and moral responsibility became intrinsic to her character. She moved forward with a clear understanding that life's challenges are opportunities to act with courage and compassion, that true success is measured not by personal gain but by the positive impact one has on others. The promise she had made, to honor her father's sacrifice through her own actions, was being fulfilled in every project, every decision, and every compassionate gesture she offered to the world. Through this journey, Michael observed the full circle of his sacrifices. The hardships endured, the watch sold, the sleepless nights, and the emotional strain had all contributed to the growth of a remarkable young woman. Emma's transformation was more than a story of recovery, it was a narrative of hope, gratitude, and the enduring power of love to shape lives. The father's sacrifices and the daughter's promise became intertwined, a living testament to the idea that selflessness and moral integrity can create ripples of change that extend far beyond the immediate moment, touching lives for generations to come. It was a crisp autumn morning when Michael noticed a small, neatly wrapped package on the kitchen table. The golden sunlight streamed through the window, casting a warm glow across the modest room, highlighting the simple but comforting decor that had become the backdrop of their lives. Michael approached the package cautiously, his mind curious but unaware of the significance it held. He lifted it gently, feeling the weight inside, a sensation that made his heart beat faster with anticipation. Though he had experienced many surprises in his life, nothing could have prepared him for what Emma had planned. Emma entered the kitchen, her eyes shining with excitement and a hint of nervousness. "Dad," she said softly, "I wanted to give you something. Something that means a lot to me and to us." Michael smiled, a mixture of curiosity and tenderness washing over him. He had spent years sacrificing for Emma, for her survival and happiness, and now the moment had come where the daughter he had nurtured, protected, and loved unconditionally was offering something from her heart. The quiet intimacy of the scene reflected a bond that had deepened through years of hardship, love, and shared experience. With careful hands, Michael opened the package. Inside was a familiar object, gleaming and polished, its face reflecting the soft light of the room. It was the vintage watch, his cherished heirloom that he had sold years earlier to fund Emma's treatment. The sight of it took his breath away. His eyes welled with tears as he held it, feeling an overwhelming mix of shock, disbelief, and profound gratitude. The watch, which had been a symbol of sacrifice and love, now returned to him in a gesture that transcended material value. It was not merely an object, it was a testament to Emma's growth, her understanding of his sacrifices, and the depth of her gratitude. Emma watched him carefully, a mixture of pride and humility in her expression. "I saved up," she said, her voice steady but emotional, "and I wanted to give this back to you. Not just the watch, but everything it represents, the love, the sacrifices, the lessons. I wanted you to know that I'll never forget what you did for me." Michael, still holding the watch, felt his hands tremble. Each word, each intention behind her actions, conveyed a depth of understanding that he hadn't fully realized she possessed until now. It was a moment of emotional convergence, past sacrifice meeting present gratitude, creating a powerful wave of connection that neither could fully articulate. The scene was quiet, yet every silence spoke volumes. The room seemed suspended in time, as if acknowledging the magnitude of the moment. Michael's heart swelled with pride and disbelief, his mind replaying the years of struggle, sleepless nights, hospital visits, and the many small sacrifices that had culminated in this single, profound act. Emma's gesture was more than a gift, it was a moral acknowledgement, a demonstration of her empathy, understanding, and capacity to honor the sacrifices of another. The contrast between what he had given and what she was giving back was emotional and almost cinematic in its impact, a culmination of love, gratitude, and family legacy. Michael held the watch closer, tracing the familiar engravings along its edge. Memories of his father flooded back, the lessons, the quiet guidance, the moments of wisdom shared in simple yet profound ways. The watch had been a constant, a tangible connection to history and heritage, and now it returned to him through the hands of the very person he had fought to save. The emotional weight of the gesture was staggering. He realized that while the watch itself was a treasured object, its true value lay in the emotional, moral, and familial significance it carried. Emma's understanding of that value was a testament to the person she had become. Tears welled up in Michael's eyes, a mixture of shock, pride, and overwhelming emotion. He embraced Emma tightly, holding her as though he might never let go. In that embrace, years of struggle, sacrifice, love, and resilience converged. Words were unnecessary, the unspoken understanding between father and daughter conveyed everything. Michael understood that the watch's return was symbolic, a tangible acknowledgement of the sacrifices made, a reflection of Emma's growth, and a confirmation of the deep emotional bonds that had carried them through the most challenging years of their lives. Emma, feeling the weight of the moment, remained composed yet emotional. "I wanted you to have this back, Dad," she said softly, "because you deserve it. You gave me life, and you gave me so much more than I could ever repay. I hope this shows you even a fraction of how much I appreciate everything you did for me." Michael, overwhelmed by the enormity of her gesture, felt an emotional clarity that transcended words. The years of struggle, worry, and selfless sacrifice now felt validated, not through acknowledgement from others, but through the heartfelt gratitude and moral understanding of the daughter he had nurtured. The act also served as a lesson for Michael himself. He realized that the sacrifices he had made were never in vain, that love and devotion carry enduring significance, and that true legacy is reflected not merely in possessions, but in the hearts and actions of those touched by it. Emma's thoughtful return of the watch was a culmination of years of moral education, empathy, and emotional growth, a vivid reminder that the most meaningful gestures often arise from love, gratitude, and understanding rather than obligation or reward. Later that evening, as they sat together in the soft glow of the kitchen, Michael and Emma reflected on the journey that had brought them to this moment. They laughed softly, recalling small memories from the hospital days, quiet victories, and shared experiences. The watch rested between them on the table, a silent witness to the trials, triumphs, and moral lessons of their shared past. For Michael, it was not merely a gift restored, it was a profound affirmation of his role as a father, the enduring strength of family bonds, and the deep moral understanding his daughter had developed. The unexpected gift also created a sense of closure. The years of struggle, sacrifice, and uncertainty were now complemented by a tangible expression of gratitude and love. Michael recognized that while the watch had originally represented the weight of impossible decisions, its return symbolized a new chapter, one defined by mutual respect, understanding, and the enduring power of family. The emotional impact of the gesture resonated deeply, reinforcing the narrative that selflessness, love, and moral integrity create lasting bonds that transcend time, objects, and material value. In the quiet moments that followed, Michael reflected on the contrast between the past and present. He had once feared that selling the watch would leave an irreplaceable void, but its return through Emma's thoughtful actions demonstrated that love and moral values are never lost, they evolve, flourish, and often return in forms more meaningful than anyone could anticipate. The small kitchen, once a setting for ordinary life, had transformed into a space of profound emotional resonance, a place where sacrifice, gratitude, and love converged in a single, unforgettable moment. The weeks that followed the return of the watch were filled with reflection for both Michael and Emma. The small kitchen, once merely a place of meals and conversation, had transformed into a space of remembrance, gratitude, and contemplation. Michael often found himself holding the watch, tracing the engravings with gentle fingers, reflecting on the journey it represented. It was a journey of struggle, love, sacrifice, and ultimately, redemption. The object that had once symbolized the weight of impossible choices now stood as a testament to enduring bonds, the power of parental devotion, and the moral growth of a daughter who had learned the true value of life and love. Emma, for her part, had matured profoundly. She understood that the watch was more than a gift, it was a representation of years of care, sleepless nights, financial hardship, and unwavering emotional support. It carried the story of a father who had prioritized life over material wealth, love over comfort, and duty over pride. She realized that her actions in returning it were not merely about giving back an object, but about acknowledging those sacrifices and embodying the values that had been instilled in her. The experience reinforced her understanding that gratitude is not just felt, but expressed through conscious, thoughtful action that honors others' contributions. Michael and Emma spent time discussing the past, sharing memories and lessons that had been learned along the way. They recalled the hospital visits, the endless nights of worry, the moments when hope seemed fragile, and the quiet victories that had gone unnoticed by anyone but themselves. Each memory carried a weight, a lesson in resilience and empathy. Through these discussions, Michael realized that his sacrifices had achieved more than preserving life, they had cultivated character, moral strength, and a sense of responsibility in Emma that would guide her throughout adulthood. The father-daughter bond had grown stronger through shared adversity. Michael had learned that love often requires tangible sacrifice, and that the true measure of a parent's devotion is not in words alone, but in actions that prioritize another's well-being above one's own desires. Emma had learned the parallel lesson: gratitude, empathy, and moral integrity are demonstrated through choices, effort, and the courage to act for the benefit of others. The return of the watch had crystallized these lessons, creating a moment of moral clarity that neither could forget. Outside the confines of their home, life continued in the small town that had witnessed their journey. Neighbors offered congratulations, friends shared in their joy, and the local community celebrated not only Emma's thoughtful gift but also the values it represented. The story of sacrifice and gratitude spread quietly, inspiring those who heard it to reflect on their own relationships and the acts of love that define family. It became a living example that even ordinary people, when motivated by love and moral courage, can create extraordinary ripples of impact that touch lives in profound ways. Michael often reflected on the contrast between material wealth and moral richness. The watch, once a symbol of personal heritage and pride, had lost its material significance and gained immeasurable emotional value. Its journey mirrored the essence of life itself. The things we hold dear are not always tangible, and the sacrifices we make are often repaid in ways we cannot anticipate. Watching Emma grow into a responsible, compassionate, and thoughtful young woman reinforced the lesson that love and sacrifice create legacies that endure far beyond physical objects, weaving into the fabric of human character and relationships. Emma, now more aware of the world's complexities, began taking active steps to extend the lessons she had learned. She volunteered in hospitals, helped families in financial distress, and engaged with community initiatives aimed at supporting children in need. Each act, while small in isolation, carried the weight of her understanding and the imprint of her father's devotion. She embodied the principle that gratitude is a living, breathing practice, one that flourishes through action and fosters a cycle of compassion that benefits both giver and receiver. The emotional impact of this period extended beyond Michael and Emma's personal lives. Friends, extended family, and neighbors observed the depth of their connection, the thoughtfulness behind Emma's gift, and the profound implications of parental sacrifice. The story of the watch became more than a family anecdote, it evolved into a lesson for everyone who encountered it, illustrating the transformative power of love, perseverance, and moral integrity. People saw that true legacy is not measured in wealth or possessions, but in the lives touched, values instilled, and actions inspired. In quieter moments, Michael reflected on his own journey, the financial struggles, the emotional turmoil, and the profound love that had guided his decisions. He understood that while the immediate outcome was Emma's survival and happiness, the long-term impact was equally significant. His sacrifices had shaped not only her life but the moral compass that would guide her future, ensuring that the lessons of empathy, gratitude, and courage would continue to ripple outward. The watch, a small yet powerful symbol, had become a focal point of these reflections, embodying the intersection of personal sacrifice and enduring moral influence. For Emma, the experience reinforced a sense of purpose and responsibility. She recognized that life often presents opportunities to act with courage and empathy, and that the measure of a person's character is revealed in how they respond to these moments. The return of the watch was not simply a gesture of love, it was a declaration of commitment to uphold the values that had guided her upbringing. She understood that gratitude is most meaningful when it inspires continued acts of kindness, ethical choices, and a dedication to helping others navigate life's challenges. Ultimately, the lessons learned from this journey were profound and lasting. Michael and Emma's story illustrated that love, sacrifice, and gratitude are intertwined forces capable of shaping character, strengthening bonds, and creating enduring legacies. The challenges they faced had tested their resilience, but the choices they made reinforced the notion that even the most difficult decisions can yield life-changing outcomes. Together, they had transformed hardship into growth, fear into courage, and loss into a powerful demonstration of the human capacity for love and moral action. The years passed quickly, yet each moment carried the weight of memories that had shaped both Michael and Emma. High school graduation arrived quietly in their small-town auditorium, a mix of excitement, nerves, and reflection. Emma walked across the stage with grace, her smile steady and genuine, her eyes bright with purpose. Michael, sitting in the audience, felt a swell of pride so intense it almost took his breath away. This was the culmination of so many years of struggle, sacrifice, and perseverance, a moment that reflected not only her achievements but the enduring bond forged through hardship and love. Emma had always been determined, but the experiences of her childhood had instilled a deeper sense of empathy and commitment to others. Her academic achievements were impressive, yet it was her character that truly shone. She had cultivated a quiet strength, a moral clarity, and a sense of responsibility that resonated in every interaction. Teachers and classmates often remarked on her thoughtfulness, her willingness to help others, and the maturity that belied her age. Michael realized that all of his sacrifices, sleepless nights, and emotional struggles had contributed to shaping a remarkable young woman, one who embodied the very values he had hoped to impart. After graduation, Emma revealed to her father that she had received an acceptance letter from a prestigious college with a full scholarship. The news was met with tears, laughter, and a sense of quiet awe. Michael could hardly believe that the daughter he had fought so tirelessly to save had grown into someone capable of achieving such extraordinary accomplishments. It was a testament not only to her intelligence and perseverance but also to the foundation of love, support, and moral guidance he had provided throughout her life. This moment was a vivid illustration of the rewards that come from selflessness and dedication, a powerful affirmation of the choices he had made when all seemed uncertain. Emma's triumph was not only academic but deeply personal. She approached her future with a clear understanding of the lessons she had learned, the importance of compassion, the value of gratitude, and the enduring significance of family bonds. Her actions reflected a desire to make meaningful contributions to the world, to extend the same support and kindness she had received to others who might face similar challenges. Michael watched her with a mixture of pride and humility, knowing that her achievements were as much a product of her character as of her determination. The watch she had returned years earlier, now polished and worn proudly on Michael's wrist, symbolized the full circle of their journey: sacrifice, love, and eventual recognition. The transition to college life brought new challenges, yet Emma faced them with confidence, guided by the lessons of her past. She navigated social dynamics, academic pressures, and personal growth with resilience, always keeping the values instilled by her father close to her heart. Michael supported her from afar, providing guidance, encouragement, and emotional support, knowing that his role had evolved from hands-on protector to mentor and moral compass. The foundation they had built together allowed Emma to thrive independently, confident in her abilities while remaining grounded in gratitude and empathy. Throughout this period, Emma also focused on giving back. She continued to engage in community service, volunteering at hospitals, tutoring students, and participating in initiatives that supported families facing medical and financial hardships. Her efforts were not about recognition but about honoring the legacy of love and sacrifice that had shaped her life. Each act of kindness reinforced the lessons she had internalized, that true strength lies in empathy, that gratitude is expressed through action, and that one's character is defined by the choices made in service to others. The story of Michael and Emma became a quiet inspiration for their community. Friends, neighbors, and even strangers who heard about the journey were moved by the depth of their bond, the power of sacrifice, and the enduring impact of love. It became a narrative that illustrated the ripple effect of compassion, the way one act of selflessness can shape the lives of others for years to come. Michael often reflected on how the difficult decisions he had made years earlier had created a chain of positive outcomes, culminating in Emma's triumph and the broader influence she now had on her community. In private moments, Michael and Emma would reminisce about the years of struggle, the hospital visits, the long nights, the moments of fear and uncertainty. These conversations were bittersweet, filled with both nostalgia and a profound appreciation for how far they had come. The return of the watch had been a symbolic milestone, but Emma's graduation, scholarship, and ongoing efforts to help others represented the living, breathing proof of their journey's moral and emotional significance. It was a reminder that sacrifice, love, and gratitude are intertwined, creating legacies that endure far beyond material possessions. Michael understood, with quiet satisfaction, that the hardest choices he had ever made had borne the most meaningful fruits. Emma's life, her triumphs, her character, and her compassion were a reflection of the enduring power of parental love and moral guidance. The journey they had undertaken together, from fear and uncertainty to hope and accomplishment, was a story of resilience, ethical strength, and the profound bonds that define family. In watching Emma step confidently into her future, Michael realized that the full circle of their journey was complete, and the legacy of love and sacrifice would continue to inspire generations yet to come. Life after Emma's triumph settled into a rhythm that was both familiar and profoundly meaningful. Michael often reflected on the years of struggle, sacrifice, and quiet perseverance that had led them to this point. The once overwhelming challenges, the hospital visits, sleepless nights, financial strain, and emotional turmoil, had all culminated in something beautiful, a daughter who was thriving, compassionate, and driven to make a difference. He realized that the true reward of his sacrifices was not material, but emotional and moral, a legacy carried forward in the heart and actions of the child he had nurtured. Michael and Emma shared moments of quiet intimacy, simple yet rich with meaning. Evenings spent together at the kitchen table, discussing dreams, ethics, and the events of the day, became cherished rituals. Michael encouraged her to continue pursuing her passions while always remembering the lessons of empathy, integrity, and resilience. Emma, in turn, offered her father insights, companionship, and a sense of continuity, reflecting the depth of the bond forged through years of shared hardship and love. Their conversations often touched on the past, highlighting the choices, sacrifices, and lessons that had defined their lives and shaped their moral compass. The return of the vintage watch remained a symbol of the journey they had shared. Its presence was a constant reminder of love, sacrifice, and gratitude. Michael often glanced at it, his heart swelling with pride and emotion, remembering the difficult decision to sell it years before and the unexpected, thoughtful gesture of his daughter returning it. The watch had become more than an heirloom, it had transformed into a testament to the enduring power of moral values, parental devotion, and the ability of one person's selflessness to inspire another. Emma's continued growth and dedication to helping others reinforced the lessons Michael had hoped to impart. She volunteered regularly at local hospitals, mentored younger students, and organized community initiatives to support families facing medical or financial hardships. Each act was infused with the understanding that love and sacrifice are not just abstract concepts, but practical forces that shape lives. Michael watched her with awe, recognizing that the values he had instilled through example, guidance, and quiet moral teaching were blossoming fully in her actions. The father-daughter duo also embraced the emotional legacy of their shared journey. They celebrated milestones not only for achievements but for the values they represented: resilience, empathy, and gratitude. Birthdays, graduations, and anniversaries were occasions to reflect on the lessons learned, the obstacles overcome, and the moral growth that had accompanied every step of their journey. These celebrations reinforced the understanding that life's true wealth lies not in material possessions but in the love, guidance, and character passed from one generation to the next. Michael often found himself reflecting on the contrast between past hardships and present joy. The struggles he had faced, once overwhelming and isolating, now served as the foundation for profound fulfillment. His pride in Emma was not merely parental pride in accomplishment but a deep, almost spiritual recognition of the moral and emotional legacy he had helped cultivate. Every step she took forward in life, every act of kindness, and every moment of thoughtful leadership in her community reflected the culmination of years of love, sacrifice, and guidance. Emma's maturity and compassion created a ripple effect within their community. Neighbors, friends, and local institutions recognized not only her achievements but also the story behind them, the story of a father's unwavering love and a daughter's moral growth. Her journey inspired others to reflect on their own relationships, encouraging empathy, gratitude, and action in daily life. Michael felt a quiet satisfaction, knowing that the sacrifices he had made were influencing not only his daughter but the broader circle of people around them. As the years continued, the lessons of love and sacrifice became deeply ingrained in their family culture. Emma carried these lessons into college, new friendships, and professional aspirations, always guided by the principles of integrity, empathy, and moral courage. Michael, watching from his own life and work, understood that the values he had instilled would continue to shape Emma's choices long after he was no longer able to guide her directly. The legacy of their shared journey was living proof of the enduring impact of selfless love. Ultimately, Michael recognized that true pride comes not from wealth, accolades, or personal comfort, but from witnessing the transformation of those we care for most. Emma's growth, her moral clarity, and her dedication to helping others were the ultimate affirmation of the sacrifices he had made. The father's pride was not fleeting or superficial, it was deeply rooted in the knowledge that love, guidance, and moral courage have the power to shape lives, inspire action, and create legacies that endure across generations. In quiet moments, Michael would reflect on their journey and realize that the story of the watch, the sacrifices, and the acts of love were more than memories, they were living proof of the human capacity for resilience, gratitude, and transformation. The legacy of love he had cultivated in Emma was now a guiding force, ensuring that the values of compassion, integrity, and selflessness would continue to inspire, heal, and influence the world long after that first difficult decision had been made.